everyone, I am Sahid. Thank you for clicking this video. I am very happy that you're here. So today I will be continuing my chapter series on this Canadian literature book that I've been reading called Moon of the Crusted Snow by waubgeshig. Today we'll be reading chapter 26. To give a brief summary about what this book is about, it's about a small indigenous anishinaabe community that's located on a reserve in the northern region of Canada. This community is very strong on hunting, fishing, giving back, living. It's their tradition, it's their custom, it's their way of honoring their land. And for a long time, this community has been very strong on its resistance. In early times, during early colonization, in which white settlers or European settlers were trying to take their land. Despite the obstacles, they tried to make sure they preserve the community and preserve their traditions and rituals and customs. And we come to realize in this book and through just seeing various ways that the culture, the language, the people, attitudes with one another has been expressed. It really highlighted their sense of resistance despite when settlers try to take their land away from them and try to take their culture away from them. And it was really beautiful, despite it not as being this community not being as large as it used to be. Seeing that there's still a good amount of people in small communities like this one that we read about in this book, it's just really meaningful to read about. And one thing I also mention in many of my other videos is what they're currently experiencing in this community at this certain period. So this community is currently facing a power outage that they describe as an apocalypse, and it is truly an apocalypse because this community has had to deal with negative sort of factors in their lives. So they no longer have electricity, they no longer have access to high internet. They have to now preserve food because their refrigerator is not working due to not having electricity. Even they don't even have water and stuff, and it's because of this lack of power. But thankfully they had an emergency generator that's sort of helping them during this time, but still it's not as effective as when they have the power. And due to this, they have to preserve things, they have to manage how to use things, and it's just they have to make sudden changes in their life, and it really challenges their resistance. And through this book we see how character motives, character attitudes and moods change due to this negative circumstance that they're in. And it's just really important to think of these things as we read the book, and we're about to come to an end of the book. And before I continue what I'm saying, I just want to say thank you so much for you just being a part of this journey. And I know it's been kind of a while. I know because I've been trying to manage school and also reading, but it's also been a goal of mine to spread awareness, or to just promote reading with you, through you guys, or through this channel. And so it's just been really meaningful to me, and I really appreciate you just being here and just supporting me. But yeah, we also come to realize that it's not only happening in their community. Nearby communities such as Gibson, Evereston Mills, we read about it in this book that they're also facing these things. That it's sort of escalated in these other parts. But what community leaders are trying to do, even though they also feel kind of helpless, is that they're trying to maintain a sort of order, which I think they're doing sort of fairly well, but yet people are still going to be panicked because people don't know, they don't have answers to their questions. And so, community leaders are trying, but, people are still feeling slightly anxious. And then with certain outsiders also come into their small community, people are having slight wary feelings about these people. And, they start to experience food insecurity, they experience, you know, issues with the water, and because the generator is what's keeping the water going, and when the diesel probably runs out, what are they going to use? And then we're coming to experience deaths. People are committing suicide. People are dying from just not having access to good food, and people are dying from extreme harsh conditions. I don't think I mentioned this, but yes, they're also in winter. It's currently during the highest peak of winter right now. And, we're coming to an end, and we're slightly seeing things and how people are starting to, I guess, rise up to try to help. And then we also have moments like the one we had in the last chapter, in chapter 25, when Dan, who is the grandfather to Mygon and Nagons, who are the kids of the main character, Even, and that's also the son of Dan. And it was beautiful just seeing how he was sort of teaching the kids about the Anishinaabe Moan words and telling them stories that are very close to the Anishinaabe people. And it's just really beautiful because I think it's so important. I mentioned this in the last chapter, that it's important to make sure that kids are aware of their identity and where they come from, their language, their culture, because this gives them a sense of confidence, a sense of self-esteem, a sense of, true, I guess, resilience in who they are, in what they face in life, because they know where they come from, and so they keep thriving. And so that was really beautiful to me, and it's been vivid through the story of how different ways that the families engage in making sure that their culture is preserved and is passed down through generations. And so that was beautiful to me. And now I will read chapter 26. Okay. Chapter 26. The volunteers gathered again at the shop to prepare for another food handout. The morning was again crisp and frigid, exacerbating the gnawing hunger in the guts of the people who woke up at sunrise to beat the rush before the usual long time formed. We gotta keep an eye out on a few of them, said Tyler, alluding to some people who had become unruly the week before, and some who were suspected of hoarding supplies from others, especially the elderly. They'd speculated whether Scott was intimidating people into handing over food or trading it for the few drops of contraband booze that remained. So what are we eating this week? Asked Even. Terry leaned back in his chair and rubbed his stringy beard. He tilted his chair forward to look at the sheet of scrawled notes, the makeshift inventory of the book supplies. Chili. Chili it is, said Tyler. He turned to Even and gave him a friendly slap in the gut. Let's go. They marched into the back of the machine shop. Except for Isaiah tending the fire in the furnace, the room was dark. Their bread still plumbed in the cold, and the air was heavy with the smell of machine grease. They stowed small plastic flashlights onto the stacks of boxes piled to the right, and the beams danced across the scattered stacks of supplies that had dwindled considerably. Evan's flashlight located the boxes at the far end of the wall, labeled chili, and they began the task of hauling them back to the front room and stacking them in front of Terry, who was still peering at the inventory sheet in the faint morning light. The place gradually warmed up with Isaiah's tending. After next week's ration day, they'd have to get more wood. They estimated they'd have about 8 more ration days before the snow melted and people could turn their attention to planting gardens and foraging the wild spring plants. The cachet would not last forever, and they had to produce the next season's food. There's only one box left, said Tyler. Just one? Asked Evan, a couple of steps behind him. Yeah, I can't see any more lying around. Shit, me neither, he said. Let's go tell Terry. Terry leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and ran his fingers through his hair before he let out a slow, "God damn." There were only a little over 200 cans of chili left, and this didn't match his inventory. He was sure he was sure there should be more, but he didn't know where they could have gone. There's not gonna be enough, Terry conceded. Go back and get some boxes of that canned ham. They're gonna be upset, said Isaiah, coming in from the back. They just got that last week. No one likes leftovers. Terry failed to notice the sarcasm. I don't give a shit. It's a free fucking handout. Whoa, chill. I was just kidding. Funny guy. Go get the corn and beans then. Terry arranged the tables in a row in front of the supplies, facing the door. He opened, letting in a burst of cold air ahead of Jeff Whitesky and Walter and Dave Migis. People would be arriving soon. They had been coming earlier every week. As worry over depleting supplies simmered through many homes. For many of the families that didn't hunt or fish, months of eating canned food was wearing on them. Their diet was a rotation of cans of ham, tuna, sausages, corn, peas, beans, various soups, and other non-perishables. They complained bitterly, but they still felt entitled to the food and took the band's preparedness for granted. Who knew how they would cope when the stress ran out? Amanda Jones and Debbie McLeod walked through the door. Morning, boys, Amanda said. What's on the menu today? Holding up his scribbled list, Walter peered over his glasses at them. Chili, ham, beans, and corn. Yum, said Debbie sarcastically. She rubbed her belly. She was thinner like most others. Thanks for coming, said Terry from the corner. He was still nominally the chief, but the strongest member of the council, especially Walter, had taken over a lot of the decisions making. Terry couldn't bear to make the tough choices that might alienate some of the townspeople, and these days all their choices were tough ones. They organized the dull line mostly in silence. Occasionally, someone would crack a cheap joke or tease another. The people in that room had accepted that life as they had become accustomed to in the last 2 decades would not return. The building finally warmed up. Debbie untied her heavy black boots so she could take off her snow pants. Amanda removed her red parka and draped it over one of the chairs. The door cracked open and a sharp ray of sunshine shot across the floor. A hooded head and scarfed face poked through the small opening. Is it food day? Even recognized Katie Birch, who had moved into her mother Vera's place with her 3 kids. Indigenous, Walter said from his seat, waving her in. Katie walked in and closed the door behind her. She pulled down her scarf and pushed back the hood of her jacket. She pulled 3 canvas bags out of her pockets. She smiled as she approached the table, revealing Stain to teach. Toothpaste was another of the household items gone from people's lives. What you need today, sweetie? Asked Debbie. You still at your mom's place? Yep, Katie replied. Me and the kids are still there. Just the 5 of us still. My brother's still at my place, but I haven't seen him in a few days. I have a feeling he might come to my mom's too, though. It's cold there, and Scott's cheap with the firewood. Keeps it all to himself. Terry looked down at his sheet. You guys got any of that moose meat left? Yep, we still got some. It probably won't last longer, though. Okay, let's see your bags then, said Amanda. We're running out of chili. Hope you don't mind ham in a can. Whatever you got, Katie replied. I'm just happy you guys are doing this. We'd be pretty hungry by now if you didn't. Tyler and Even filled her bags with 4 cans of chili, 10 cans of ham, 10 cans of beans, and 8 cans of corn. Homes with small children got priority with the protein-rich food, and the staff and council decided who needed what at their own discretion. They were growing suspicious of some people they believed were abusing the handouts. Isaiah and Even brought the bags back to Katie, who offered a simple miigwech and a smile before going back out the door and loading them on her plastic sled to pull home. The morning proceeded mostly in quiet routine. 20 cans of canned ham went to some. 15 went to others. They tried to spread out the chili sparingly and fairly. Brandon Jones said he needed more cans of meat because his brother Matt's family had just moved in with them. Jeff reminded him that they'd eventually have to get out and hunt. Brandon didn't appreciate that what he felt was scolding and told him to fuck off as he left. By midday, a lineup had formed that snaked out the door and around the building. People held large backpacks, empty hockey bags, and plastic sleds at their sides, anticipating heavy hauls. Many faces had lost color, and some bore even the yellow stain of malnutrition. Inside, the crew worked as quickly as possible to fill bags and answer questions. None had expected this sudden rush to the handout. There were lineups in previous weeks, but they hadn't formed this quickly. It made them all uneasy. What's behind this? Thought Even. What kind of rumors were going around that they hadn't heard? People in the line grew restless, with the door propped open as people tried to squeeze in. The team could hear shouting outside. Walter told Even, Isaiah, and Tyler to go out and investigate. Outside, the shouts were crisp, cutting accusations and threats. Fuck you, you're the one who butted in front of me, yelled one man. Even recognized his cousin Jason. Fuck that, asshole, step back, said another man. He saw the tussle brewing. About halfway down the line, as they approached, they could see that it was Tyler's brother fighting with Jason. Whoa, 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 Tyler shouted. Break it up. He stepped between their punches, taking a couple errant blows to the face in the process. Their heavy jackets and sweaters slowed their swings, but the men were bloody, with split lips and crunched noses. Others stepped in to pull them apart, but soon caught up in the violence and began scraping with each other. Pent-up tension exploded along the line, and it quickly descended into an all-out brawl. Men and women swore and yelled. Adrenaline surged through Even as he saw blood dripping from his cousin's ashen face. Didn't get along, but Jason was still family. He plugged in, pulling at arms, punching at any face he could see until he found himself toe to toe with Tyler. He lunged forward, wrapping his arms around Tyler's torso and driving him into the side of the shop. His cap came off and his long brown hair flew out. The slam knocked the wind out of Tyler. "What the fuck, Eve?" he grunted out as he tried to get his breath back. "Calm down. What are you doing?" He pushed at Even's arms to free himself from the grip. 4 sharp cracks of gunfire pierced the havoc, bringing silence to melee. Justin Scott stood at the bottom of the road, leading up to the shop, holding a handgun in the air. Despite the freezing temperatures, his bald head was bare, bouncing the sunlight back to the sky. To his right stood Brad Connor, another of the newcomers. Scott lowered the gun to his side and walked forward. The other man a step behind him. "Settle down." Even and Tyler stood side by side, with disheveled jackets and tousled hair. Scott looked at them. "Jesus Christ, what's gotten into you? Into you too? I thought you were supposed to be the reasonable ones around here." Even looked at his boots. His damn temper had gotten out of control again, which hardly ever happened before all this. They ran out of the fruit cocktail in there. Tyler quipped. Even snorted and wiped his warm snot on his sweater sleeve. He looked back at Scott, who just shook his head. "Is the whole gang inside?" Scott asked Even, who nodded. "All right then." "All right then." He looked to Connor and gestured with his head in the direction of the building. "Let's go." Both men strode past the queue of hungry people who stared at them in resentment. Scott towered over everyone else in the community, even Tyler and Connor was only a few inches shorter. Their pale faces shimmered in the daylight. Scott ignored everyone, but Connor surveyed the line cautiously. Scott threw the door open and walked inside. Debbie, Walter, and Terry looked up to see the men stroll in ahead of the line. Walter sighed and Terry guided his expression to neutrality. Debbie handed a bag to a young father at the front of the line and asked, "What's up, boys?" "Oh, we just came by to see how the handouts were going today," Scott answered. He sauntered towards the table and sat down in one of the open chairs at the side. Connor stayed at the wall by the door. He scratched his thick red beard before putting his hands in the pockets of his snowmobile jacket. "Steady as she goes," Debbie replied. "Really?" Scott cocked his head. "Because it looked like you had a brawl outside just a couple minutes ago. People are hungry." Debbie shrugged. "It's cold out today, too." The people standing in the line, in the inside food line, watched Scott uneasily. He looked at the line of brown faces with Halloween cheeks. The heads without tokus or bald caps were shaggy and greasy. The growing desperation of palpable, and none of the leadership in the room could deny it. "If you guys want some, you're gonna have to go to the back of the line," Debbie said as she handed another full canvas bag to a young woman. "We gotta keep this going." Scott cleared his throat and fixed his eyes on Terry and Walter, who were trying to focus on a list of people and supplies in front of them. I think we're good for today, thanks, he declared as if to make some kind of point. We snared a few pretty big rabbits the other day. That's probably more than you can say for anyone else here. Terry's eyes cut sharply to Scott. Scott stood up, stepped closer to them. The young woman waiting for her food shuffled backwards. He put both hands on the table and leaned in. His deep set blue eyes moved from Terry to Walter to Debbie and back. I know you're running out, he whispered. And if you think you can just brush off shit like what just happened outside, you're delusional. He leaned in closer. They're gonna go crazy. They're gonna get violent. And when the last can goes from that room in the back there, they're gonna come for you. Unless they get their shit together, you're gonna have a serious crisis on your hands. Terry's fist clenched on the surface of the table. The hot Fronance air felt dry in Evan's throat. Scott brought his whisper down even lower, but not too low, so the first few people near the table could hear his foreboding message. You're gonna have to think about feeding your people, and you're running out of options, but I know where we can find something else to eat, and I think you know what I mean. Scott stood up and smiled, his mouth cavernous and dark behind his big teeth. Chi Miigwech for your time, Chief, he said, changing his tone. I look forward to discussing this matter with you again. He turned around and stepped out the door, with Connor following closely behind. And that is the end of chapter 26. Let's talk about it. So, chapter 26. This is the point in which I was worried that this small community would get to. And it finally happened, and the worry that I've had sort of as I was reading this book, as I slightly was grasping the plot, was getting to the point at which things would escalate as it did in the nearby areas like Gibson and Everston Mills. It's finally gotten to the point in the res, and it's really sad seeing that. Seeing that food has just gotten to the point which it's basically ran out, because we come to read about that there's literally only one box of what they were passing out at the moment, chilies left, and this is bad because the food rationing they've been doing and the food they've been providing for families, for just the people in the community has come to sort of an end. And it's really sad reading about that because, now this is going to cause not only panic in the community leaders, because they're going to feel helpless that they're not able to help the community, but also it's going to also lead to panic within the community. And that's what we get to when people start to sort of line up. And there have been certain slight experiences with people sort of hoarding over food, but it finally escalated in this food passing rationing day, in which when people were lining up in midday, it was a lot of people this time than normal. It was, the line formed quicker, and so things got slightly chaotic because of the amount of people that were there. And it started with just a moment in which Evans, somebody even recognized Jason, was getting into a quarrel with one of the maintenance staff, Tyler's brother, and that sort of escalates. And then at some point, Tyler and Evan are fighting each other. And it's just like, that was very unexpected, and sort of, and then people blood started like dripping. The violence got worse. People were punching and throwing blows, and it really was really sad reading about that, and it really made me sort of like, oh no, in my head, and it really is unfortunate that this negative circumstance has caused people to act in these ways, and people are just acting on impulse and just sort of out of control. And it's really sad seeing community leaders and people who I think as community leaders, like even Tyler, engaging in violence himself. And then we have a moment in which Justin Scott, who is the outsider, comes in and sort of stops it by shooting in the air. Something he often does, because he likes just shooting tins. But anyways, he sort of comes in and stops it, and he sort of like, he expected even and Tyler to be the reasonable ones here, which that's I thought to myself when I was reading that, like, yeah, these are people I would think to not engage in things like this, but mostly even, right? Because he's the main character, and he's somebody who I have described in other chapters as a very sort of hardworking. He's a leader. He just cherishes community. He cherishes working to help his community and all that. So it was unexpected to see that he would do that. So, but anyways, despite that, what really infuriated me and made me mad was when Justin Scott went into the band council's the I think, sorry, the shop or the store where they were passing out food, and not the shop but the band council building where they were passing out food. When he walked in and started sort of questioning the people who were passing out food, and at some point he started whispering to Terry and saying that he knows what's going on, that food is running out, and that he knows that they're trying to hide it from the people, but deep down he knows what's going on, and that it's gonna end up getting worse. People are gonna come after them. It's gonna be a crisis on the community leaders' hands. And seeing that really infuriated me, because I'm just like, wow, this is really showing of his character and what he really wanted for the community, and he should have just projected the things that happened in his community in Gibson. And it's sort of hypocritical, because like the reason you escaped your community was to escape from the violence and to find a better opportunity for yourself. So for you to come into this new community and try to say these things as an outsider really shows his character, and it shows why a lot of people, it's justifiable for why people were wary about him being in this community. He's an outsider, and he's also a white man who, you're in an indigenous native community. They're not gonna, people, even when he walked in, people looked at him in resentment in this chapter that we read about. And so this really shows how people just don't like Justin Scott, and I honestly don't like him. I don't like his character. And just reading this, what he said to Terry, really infuriated me, and it's really upsetting. And he sort of just tells Terry that we need to find other ways to look for food. And I don't know what he means by there are other options. I don't know if he means hunting. So I'm curious on reading about that in the next chapter, and seeing how sort of community leaders sort of, I guess, create a solution to this issue that's going on, and also how they sort of end this Justin Scott terrorizing that he's doing right now. Because honestly, it's kind of like he's kind of being aggressive to community leaders. He's taking on his actions of, saying these words. I don't like that. So I need to find something to put an end to that. But anyways, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please kindly subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.